Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Okay, so a bit of backstory. I grew up loving the Assassin's Creed franchise, the first one. I've played Assassin's Creed 1 with Altair, and even though some games are bad, Unity, I still find myself reminiscing about those games. Meet the cast. Entitled, a narcissistic witch, the entitled kid who is the best reason for the use of contraception, and Dad and me. About 2 weeks ago, on a Friday afternoon, my dad took me to GameStop because I had managed to save up some money by doing chores. We got there, masks on and wallets out. As we entered the store, I saw a crying kid with his mom. His cries sounded like a tire skirting off the road, but we didn't pay much attention to them. I went to the Xbox One section to pick up my favorite Assassin's Creed game, which is Black Flag. As we went to pay for it, I felt a tap on my shoulder. There, I saw the thing that can make Satan himself scared. Hey Karen. She looked at me, then at my dad, and finally at the cashier, and she said, "Surely you're not going to let that horrible parent buy this small child such a violent game." Keep in mind, I am nearly 16 and 5'11". I was basically towering over her and her kid. The cashier said, "Ma'am, this person wants to purchase this game, and the father has an ID. To buy an M or R rated game, you need to be over 18 and have an ID. She looks at my dad and says, "You're a terrible father, and you don't deserve a child." He's not really a confrontational person, so he just sits there and takes it, but I was having none of it. I look at her and say, "Lady, you have a crying son that's been doing nothing but throw tantrums." She then says, "That's none of your concern, and your dad should be locked up for showing violence to you at such a young age." I tell her to leave me and my dad alone because we don't care for her feedback. She was in utter disbelief that a teen is talking back to her, and she demands to speak to the manager. When he comes out, she bombards him with statements like, "He's a bad father, and he's too young to play this game," while her kid was holding a copy of Skyrim for the Nintendo Switch. Anyways, the manager asks my dad what really happened, and he tries to explain as best as he can in English. Our family is from Ecuador. The manager then asks the entitled mother to mind her own business and to leave us alone. Learning that she didn't get her way, she tries racism and says those immigrants are killers and that we're buying this game to learn how to murder. I hate racist people. So hearing this made my nonchalant attitude crumble down to the dirt. I glare at her and tell her to get her racist self away from me and my dad before I get charged for assault. Which I wouldn't do. It was just a scare tactic. Her entitled kid hearing this calls me a stupid Mexican and to mow their lawn so I could afford dinner. Then proceeds to throw the display box of Skyrim at my head, which kinda hurt. Mad at this point, I push him to the ground and say, "Screw you and your racist and basic witch of a mom." He was like 14, so it wasn't like I had a 7-year-old, but to be fair, I probably should have kept my cool. Anyways, after that, the manager informs us that he called the cops and to wait outside. The entitled mother with a smug look says, "Gladly." The cops arrive and question me, my dad, and then the entitled mother and kid. But for some reason they believe a white woman and her kid wearing professional attire over two brown-skinned Hispanics in shorts and white tees. The cop looked at me and said that I could be in trouble for threatening her and hitting her son, which I didn't do, by the way, I only pushed him. Then the Lord himself sent an angel, the cashier. She came up to the cop and said, "Would you like to hear my side?" She looked at me and my dad and jokingly said, "I was there, wasn't I?" She packed up my and my dad's stories and even showed him footage. The officer, full of embarrassment, looked at the entitled mother and told her to leave the area and to leave me alone. Seeing as she lost, you would think she would give up, but nope. She walks up to us and screams about how we are immigrant killers, and that we work for the cartel and that we deserve to starve to death outside the border. Then smacks my dad, which in response to, if the cop didn't stop me, I would have knocked the wind out of her two-toned stomach. The cop then handcuffs her and tells her she's being arrested for assault. The entitled mother then states, "You can't arrest me, I have rights," which the cop responds back with, "Yes, you do," and begins to read her right while taking her to the car. The manager gave us a 25% discount, which I appreciated, and we lived to enjoy many hours of lawn mowing, selling with the cartel, cleaning toilets and killing people as immigrants do. And as for the kid, he just stood there crying watching the cop take away his mom and glaring at me with hateful eyes. Serves him right. Hey, first time poster here. This happened to me a while ago and I thought you folks would get a kick out of it. I had reported to work on this particular Monday where I am the site supervisor for an armed security account, only to discover that the blasted idiots that worked the night shift had not only left me an empty coffee pot, a mortal sin, but had entirely cleaned me out of coffee, leaving me not but an empty container devoid of my much-needed morning caffeine. The inconsiderate so-and-sos. Grumbling, I go off to the local market to buy some caffeinated goodness so as to keep my heart beating through my busy day. Mind you, I'm in uniform, which means black pants, dress shirt was my badge, and various security emblems. My duty belt was firearm, baton, handcuffs, and so on. For the sake of those squeamish folk out there that go all white in the face when they see a firearm, I have also donned a windbreaker with security written across the back in 6-foot-high day-glow yellow letters. In other words, I looked nothing like any of the folk who worked at this market, whose uniform consisted entirely of a green apron. Now mind you, I probably could have handled this better, but I was grumpy. It was a Monday morning without coffee after all. So I'm standing just inside the door of the market reading the chalkboard where they have written their menu for the small cafe they run when this entitled wench on her cell phone walks up to me and tries to hand me a slip of paper. Okay, I'm a bit confused, but I take it and give it a look. But as soon as I do, the entitled wench makes a little showing motion, walks away, and sits down at a bench by the door. Never says a word to me, doesn't even really look at me, barely acknowledges my existence and just walks off. So I'm kinda annoyed, you might say. Look at this piece of paper and it's a list of, you guessed it, groceries. What? So I wander over and politely inquire as to what exactly this is and why she had seen fit to hand it to me. My grocery list, of course. Pitch them for me, I'm in a hurry and can't be bothered. I'm on a very important phone call. And again with a showing motion. Now, I've been going to this market for nigh on to 5 years, and I can assure you they don't fetch your groceries for you. So after some consideration, I very carefully rolled her list into a tight little bowl, dropped it on her lap and loud growled at her to get moving and do her own shopping, turn around and walk off. I hear her screeching out something behind me, but I just ignore her and keep walking. Now at this point, I am seriously thinking that she will take the hint, see the day-glow letters on my jacket, and buy a clue. But oh no, she's just not that smart. She instead chases me down and starts yelling about how she's going to get me fired and I need to fetch her groceries right now. Trying to remain calm, I politely, honest, but forcefully tell her again very clearly, "I don't work here, do your own damn shopping, lady." And I leave. Thinking that's the end of it, off I go to get a cup of wonderful hot coffee at the cafe and then move on to the Isle of Heaven, where I'm busily pursuing their fine selection of lovely roasted goodness, when who should appear but the entitled wench with a gentleman in tow. She's loudly berating him about his lazy workers and demanding that I be fired on the spot. This poor gentleman looks confusedly at me, then at her, and informs her he doesn't work here. We don't employ security, ma'am. Being a bit of a jerk, I wave at her, give her a big smile, and agree with him. And she absolutely loses it. Goes completely insane, and she starts screaming that I need to fetch her groceries right now, or she's going to get us all fired. That she's an important person, and how we will regret treating her this way, blah blah blah. The gentleman finally gets a word in edgewise and again informs her that I don't work there, and I don't have to do anything for her. And this is when I can see a dim light bulb go off in her head, and can see a glimmer, tiny but there, of understanding beginning to dawn in her eyes. This dim light is however quickly squashed by her overinflated sense of entitlement, as she promptly replies in the snottiest voice possible, I kid you not, with, "Well, he's obviously a menial of some sort. Make him." Well, to say this got me a tad riled up is perhaps an understatement. So I shoved a one-finger salute into her face and told her emphatically to go screw herself. The gentleman quickly got between us and loudly told her, in no uncertain terms, that 1, again, I don't work there, and 2, that she needed to get out of this store right now. She literally screamed at the top of her lungs, no words, just rage, and she started demanding to see someone in charge so she could get us all fired and someone better get her groceries. And how she was going to sue us all? Didn't we know how important she was? And a gentleman who I had naturally assumed was a manager promptly got right back in her face and yelled over her that he was the owner, his family had owned the place for 20 years, and they had never in all that time done someone's shopping for them. Ever. He then grabbed her by the arm and literally dragged her off towards the front of the store. At that point, I was just shaking my head in disbelief, but I just went ahead, made my selection of fine coffees, and wandered over to stand in line to pay for it. As I'm there at the register, the owner came up to me and actually apologized for that woman's behavior, and we shared a what the miss moment. Actually ended up just laughing at how stupid she was. Or crazy, either way. He even tried to let me have the coffee for free, but I thanked him and told him it wasn't his fault that the entitled wench was so stupid, and I was fine with paying for it. Now you'd think that was the end of it. I mean, it was crazy, but weird stuff happens. People are idiots, whatever. But oh no, dear readers, it would appear that we have both underestimated the depth of that woman's craziness. Because as we walked through the door to the outside world, who, to our astonishment, was there waiting for us? Of course, it's the entitled witch. It turns out she had actually called the police on us, and the dumb brat was out there screaming at the officer, demanding that we be arrested for not serving her, and how she wanted us both fired. And she was going to sue us and that someone had better get her groceries right now. My jaw dropped. I don't mind saying it, and I was beyond shocked. I honestly started laughing at that point. This lady was certifiably nuts. Because of my job, we happened to work closely with a local PD, so I actually recognized the officer that had responded to call and gave Officer Betsy a wave when she looked at me. She gave me a grin and walked over asking about exactly what was going on. We both gave our side of the story and the owner asked that she be removed from the property, please, as she was at this point causing a scene. Betsy just rolled her eyes, walked over and told the entitled wench that she needed to leave right now, immediately, or she would be charged with trespassing. Now, do you ever have that moment when you can see something bad start to happen, but your mind just can't quite believe it's actually occurring? Well, I saw it start, clear as day, as the entitled winch reared back and started to go off again, and yep, there it was. She actually jammed her finger into the officer Betsy's sternum. Not once, but twice. Might have been a third time, but Officer Betsy had at that point picked her up, flipped her over and dropped the entitled winch on her head, landed on top of her, had her handcuffed in record time, got back up, opened her door, slid her into the back of her patrol car, and slammed the door on her. We all just stood there shaking our heads in total disbelief as that woman started to scream and thrash about and kick at the windows of the squad car. She was still doing it as Officer Betsy drove off to the station too. Last month, while pregnant, I went to my 39-week checkup. The doctor had been concerned because the baby was not in the right position for birth. So I was told that they were going to do an external cephalic version, ECV, which is when the doctor uses her hands on a belly to cause pressure for the baby to move into the right position. While doing this, I was being monitored by their computer, and the baby's heart was also being monitored. It was very uncomfortable, but I know the doctor was being safe. Ultimately, it didn't work, so they scheduled a C-section for the following week. but told me that if the baby had moved to the right position by then, they would induce me for a vaginal birth. The day of the ECV, I told my extended family, including my mother-in-law. She's from Mexico and likes to do traditional home remedies and treatments for her ailments. One of the traditions she has is visiting a sobadora, which is like a masseuse that claims to fix many problems using their herbal oils and chiropractic techniques. Well, she suggested that I go to this woman to turn the baby, and that way I could avoid the C-section. I told her many times that day that I wouldn't trust someone to work on my belly without monitoring my baby's heart. I thought she understood that I was against this idea, but the following morning, she knocked at my door and she had the sobadora lady with her. I tried to be nice to them and tried to explain how I wasn't comfortable letting her touch me. But they kept insisting, and it got to the point that I was so angry that I yelled at both of them to leave because the sobadora was not a doctor and she's not qualified to do any treatment on me. They left, but my mother-in-law called me an ungrateful snob. The following week, my baby had still not moved, so I did end up getting a C-section, but my baby is healthy and I'm grateful to the doctors who helped deliver her to me safely. But now it's been a couple of weeks since my argument with my mother-in-law, and even though she gives the baby so much love, she's very short with me, and she told me that I should apologize for how rude I was to her. I don't want to apologize because I feel she was the one who was out of line. My husband was always supportive of my decision and was backing me up, but somehow my mother-in-law still doesn't get that she was inappropriate in what she was asking me to do. My sister-in-laws both said that I should have given it a chance since it could have helped me avoid the C-section, and that I acted like a jerk to the sobadora by saying she wasn't a doctor. So I don't know, am I the jerk for the way I refused the traditional treatment? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying you're not the jerk. You had every right to say no. You said no politely enough times that you needed to use a more emphatic response. What else would they have wanted you to do to get rid of them? More politely when they refuse to leave. Politely and quietly call the police and request that they get physically dragged out and arrested? There is a time and a place for traditional medicine. However, when there is such a significant possibility of harm to your unborn child that the doctor was monitoring the baby's heartbeat when he performed this procedure, there is no chance I would have allowed this unknown person to practice on me and my child in your situation. I assume your mother-in-law meant well. However, she is absolutely wrong. She refused to respect your boundaries, demanded that you allow her to risk harming you and your baby regardless of what you choose, and threw a rude tantrum because you defied her when you had every right and obligation to do so. Her judgment is so far gone right now that I would not allow unsupervised contact with your child. I hope someone can explain this to her so that she understands. Another commenter adds, not the jerk. Your mother-in-law doesn't seem to understand the concept of consent. You could not have been more clear about the home remedy, and the way your mother-in-law tried to bully you was crazy aggressive. This is a warning sign for the future. I have a hunch that if she disagrees with you with anything about how you raise your family, she'll just step in and do what she thinks is right. Take your kids to her special healers or whatever. You will need a master class in boundary management. A third commenter goes with, not the jerk. 26 years ago, my daughter was in a frank breech position. My doctor also attempted a version which was unsuccessful. C-section was the only way to go. The C-section revealed that my daughter's umbilical was short, very short, like roughly 6 inches long according to the doctor, and had the version been successful, it would have torn the umbilical cord and likely killed my daughter. And that doctor's office was attached to the hospital, or the OR was just down a hallway from the office.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.